alaikum. I'm Dr. Tahira and you're watching program Health is Wealth. With the wedding season round the corner, everybody talking about bride's clothes. We are here talking about the bride's health. The health of the bride, the homemaker, the mother. So let us today in detail talk about women's health and diseases. Welcome to another episode of Health is Wealth. The wedding season is here, it's winter, and everywhere we see there are weddings here and there. We pay a lot of attention on what we are going to wear, how we are going to decorate the stage and everything. But in our part of the world, the real concept of marriage is not that well understood. What I'm talking about is what is prenatal health, what is natal health, what is postnatal health, what exactly does marriage mean, bringing together a family, bringing forward a family. That's why we thought we will discuss today in the very beautiful house and clinic setting of Professor Saiba, Dr. Professor Sayyeda Batul. Thank you so much, Dr. Sayyeda Batul Mazhar, for joining us today. She's a renowned gynecologist and obstetrician, and she's doing what it takes best to bring forward good families in a good way. So, Dr. Saiba, let me ask you, why do we have so much of emphasis on weddings and wedding clothes, whereas we don't ever go into, the importance of how and is when a person ready to start a family?
I think this is a very important issue that we are discussing today. Somehow I often feel this all glamour around the wedding is to put the little girl, she has no clue what she's entering into. It is a delusional state, and then when the reality sets in, you realize what has happened. So not to disenchant our young girls, but definitely marriage is a big step, and we should be prepared mentally, physically for this step. Like I often say to my parents, I say, give your daughter folic acid as Jahez.
When we talk about, hemoglobin, you said a lot of our population is anemic and they don't realize why they're anemic. What is the reason for this severe anemia across our population? Is it iron deficiency anemia? Is it their diet? Is it the way they are being brought up? Like the boys are always given the better, more nutritious part of the diet. What is the main reason?
I think there are multiple reasons. I think the basic reason, we are a poor country. We have tremendous poverty, and the quality of our food is poor. We are unfortunately from South Asia, where adulteration is so common. We are not sure what is in the milk. We are not sure what is the chicken being fed on.
Exactly.
We do not know what hormones are being given to our cows to produce more milk. So we have these issues. But I think the water supply is unsafe. We have sewage water which is getting mixed up with the water supply. So people have worms in their intestine. They are eating away with their iron and all the vitamins. So we have a multitude, but poverty is the major issue, followed by all the garam and thanda. So, we have, the girl, if she gets pregnant, she is not allowed to have so many things because we think that they are, not good for her.
Exactly.
And same happens to her when she delivers. Half the things she's not allowed to eat because the milk gets bad. If you have chane ki dal, the baby has colic.
So is this true? Because they say it at the time of Minaki as well. Oh, don't feed them eggs, don't feed them milk. It's not good for them. They're going to get, precocious puberty. So can you please bust all these myths so that people start giving good, nutritious food to their daughters?
I always say, I had a grandmother who was from village, and she was a tremendously wise woman. And I respect her thoughts and whatever advice she used to give me. But I can take it with a pinch of salt. I understand why she is saying it. So they don't allow you to have a shower during menstruation.
Exactly.
That is not acceptable in our climate. But obviously you should be careful that you don't have in the winters you have a shower with cold water. You take care. But in hot weather, if you do not allow a woman to shower for 7 days, she is nowhere. Same is true, like first 6 days after delivery, again forbidden to have a shower, and if you do, then you'll be bloated up, and there's lots of myths. So I think we have to respect our elders, and we do not have to show defiance to whatever they are saying, but you have to maintain the hygiene and carry on, and do not say in their face that we do not agree with you, because we respect our elders. So that is traditional wisdom. I'll just give you an example. My grandmother used to say, never comb your hair after Maghrib.
Right,
So, but And then when I talked to my mother, she said, after Maghrib, there were no lights.
Right.
And if you combed your hair
And it
would
got into
fall
the
into the
food.
food.
Oh.
So there is wisdom. But
Yes.
nowadays, there's more light in the evening than in the morning.
Exactly.
So
yes.
we have to give
So
that.
you have to use logic and sense before acting upon any of these things. But these are things from the past days. But nowadays, a lot of girls, they're dieting and using different kind of fad diets, and because of that, they are malnutrition. So could you stress more on these eating disorders amongst young girls, especially?
I think these there are lots of generic, keto diet and fasting diet,
Yeah,
and
a
all
lot
sorts
of
of
fad
egg
diets.
diet.
Huh.
I get very bogged down with them. But I think the main thing is we have to regularly in our life maintain a balanced diet. You can do a fad diet for a month and lose 5-10 kg and then get on with your life.
Yeah.
You cannot have that
Make it a
fad
way
diet
of life.
for forever. And the other point that I want to stress is Pakistan is in the thalassemia belt.
Right.
We, especially in the northern regions, have a lot of thalassemia trait. And unfortunately, because we have a lot of consanguineous marriage, cousins getting married, and that's our tradition, that gets multiplied.
Right.
We have legislation which says that you should have thalassemia test before you get married.
Exactly.
The couple should have it.
But nobody
and
has it.
I think none of our grand weddings people know about it.
No, nobody.
And same is true in Balochistan. You have sickle cell trait,
Right.
because that's a coastal region,
Huh.
and that's a disease of the African people. And we have lots of Makrani,
Descent,
even
yes,
those
African
people who
descent.
look very Pathan,
Huh.
but they have that blood in them.
African
So
gene,
we have
yeah.
a problem in Balochistan of thalassemia as well as sickle cell trait.
Right.
And these things we are in denial. That is the biggest issue. If
Yeah.
we could have screening before marriage, and then we make a decision, yes, we both have thalassemia trait, we'll do all the screening, we still want to get married, why not?
So is there any legislation, because for example, in the Middle East and in the West, it's mandatory for the couple to have these kind of tests before they plan a family, before they have any children. But here we see, if there's a family with one muscular dystrophy, they have five kids with muscular dystrophy just in the hope that they'll have one normal kid. As a result, they are, such a big economic burden, such a big psychological burden on the family, on the country, on everybody. So could you please stress on the importance, at least for all these viewers out there, educated girls and boys getting married, to first go through a complete testing to see if they're compatible, or if they don't have any such hereditary diseases in them, for example, Huntington's or all of these?
Thalassemia is a condition which suddenly crops up. So you've had no thalassemia in your family, and suddenly you have 2 transfusion dependent children in the family.
exactly.
And that's when you wake up to the realization. But unfortunately, we have no implementation.
We just have the paper.
So I may be offending people.
No. So when we talk about, we spoke about all this prenatal screening and everything. What about, let's talk about the young girls first, and then we come to the married girls. In the young girls, we have a lot of problem of menorrhagia, dysmenorrhea, a lot of absenteeism from school. Recently, there's a lot of leukorrhea as well. So could you, shed light on these problems of young girls first?
I think those girls who go to school, those girls who do read books, we have science books, and I remember it's been a while when my son was in school, and in their books we could have the reproductive system.
Exactly.
Every system is very much there. So it helps that if you have a bit of orientation, you're going to school, you can clearly orient them and their mothers to what is happening. Leukorrhea is a condition again that is somehow in the brains of our
Girls.
community.
Yeah, it's there. Every other person
And I
seems
would
to be
like
complaining
to
about it.
reassure all the mothers and all the young girls, it is normal. What I compare it to is that if you do not have saliva in your mouth, how will you swallow food?
Exactly.
Similar is leukorrhea, where as the girl matures, goes through puberty, the system builds in pregnancy. I said, why?
You get dark. They
Oh
say you
yes,
dark.
I get my child would be darker in
Darker,
complexion. I
yeah.
said, just relax, just look at your husband, look at yourself. You'll have a baby looking like the parents. Do not expect them to look like Nordic people.
Exactly.
And I think we should be proud of the color we have.
Yeah, of our features, of
And true Eastern beauty is indeed always said to be, the Savla complexion or the wheatish
Exactly, the
complexion.
wheatish, golden complexion.
And obviously, even in the African ladies, beauty is universal. It has nothing to do with color.
No,
But
not
somehow
at all.
this has been ingrained in us by the British who ruled us.
Yeah.
The blue eyes are supposed to be beautiful, but I think the black is far more beautiful.
Yeah, far more
The
exotic
black
and intoxicating.
eyes are so beautiful.
Right.
And whenever I often say, you know, if you look at classical Pakistani beauty, it is always, you know,
Yeah.
the
Big black eyes. Yeah. Kohol. That's true. I think we need to work a lot on the self-esteem of the girls as well, and work on their confidence in general. Let's talk about menorrhagia. Why do so many girls suffer from menorrhagia, and what do they need to take about it? Because a lot of over-the-counter medication is available. A lot of people on the web nowadays are taking transamine and this, that, here, right, left and center. They keep abusing, for example, mefenamic acid. So what would you advise them and how?
First of all, it is a subjective thing. The same problem would be interpreted differently by two women. One woman would say, I am having too little. Another would say, I am being killed by this. And
Right.
when you objectively assess it, often
the same.
it is much different. So it is a perception. But the main thing is, if a woman is complaining of heavy periods, irregular periods, especially in the adolescent girls, we give them iron supplements or vitamins, and usually they overcome it over a couple of years. Once they start their periods at 12, and by 14, 15 things are sorted. The periods irregularity gets sorted. But it is in the older women we are more concerned. They can have things like fibroids, which are from the uterus. They could have other adenomyosis. There are lots of diseases which could contribute to heavy periods, and they should see their general practitioner or the health worker around, and if they refer, then they should go to a gynecologist. And there are very simple remedies, but we need to be sure. Sometimes you may, in an older woman who's 45, 55, she's having irregular bleeding, and that is maybe a sign of some cancer or a pre-cancer, and because everybody says this is menopause, don't go to a doctor, it is normal, and you may then go in advanced cancer because you were misguided.
Exactly.
So seeing a practitioner, and another important message that I would give to my health practitioners as well as patients, it has become very fashionable just to do ultrasound. So we don't talk to the woman, we don't take a proper history, just do an ultrasound and say you're fine, your ultrasound is good. But
You
if
have to do a
somebody
pap smear and
a
everything.
pap smear, an examination, you have to examine, inspect whether there is any abnormality in the cervix. And again, a simile is again that if you have a sore throat, you don't go off and have an x-ray of the brain.
Exactly.
You say, ah,
And
and,
then take
somebody
a swab.
puts a light in it. The same is true in the gynecologist. It is the duty of the general practitioner or the gynecologist, if there is some complaint, do an examination by speculum or by gloves, so that obvious problems are picked up and we do not go for ultrasound is important, but that's the
Yeah, but people want to go the
investigation.
more painless way, right? So they get scared of the gynecologist sticking out anything.
It is so.
So
It is
that's
so.
why I
It
think
is
they
so.
get
It is
they
so.
choose the easier
It is
route.
so.
Let's talk about PCOS or PCOD, the most spoken about topic these days. And just like you were mentioning, we don't know what we are having. So our chicken and our eggs and our everything is so laden with all these different kind of hormones, and I think that's the main thing attributing to this. But it's running the dermatologist work pretty well. So if you could shed some light on PCOS and PCOD.
And I'd like to reassure girls, whoever labels you as PCOS, you do not have cysts. It's just a little larger ovary than it should be, and it doesn't ovulate every month. So it gives an ultrasound appearance of PCOS, but you do not have cysts. Just relax. People think I've got big, cysts. That's not the case. So I think it has to do with our lifestyle. It has to do with the food delivery that is happening in our homes. And if
All the
children don't
processed
like
food.
their mother's cooked food,
yeah.
they just refuse it, and the rider is standing outside with all the wrong foods. So sitting in front of the computer, in the mobile, not doing
physical
exercise, not taking adequate water, and then having modified foods. So you maybe, I don't know whether the microwave is incriminated, whether the chicken is incriminated, we don't know, but it is the lifestyle. So you have to get out of this lifestyle. We have good schools who are limited to small homes. They are not in the big campuses where children have to run and we used to march and we used
and
to
get sunlight. Yeah,
so
nothing.
these are things which are adding to PCOS. So the mantra is more than 50% is lifestyle. The rest has to do with pathology. So please change your lifestyle. I tell the mothers, please you take your daughter to the park for an hour. Good for you, good for the little girl.
Exactly.
Similarly, in schools, we have to encourage extracurricular activities
Yeah.
because those days are gone when you just sit and study.
Yeah.
You have to have a portfolio which
Exactly.
shows, because that is where you excel nationally and
Right.
internationally.
True.
Extracurricular, debating, going to other schools and advocating so many things, volunteer activities, these have to be encouraged, and it has nothing to do with the quality of school, it has to do with schooling.
Exactly. So a lot of physical activity and a lot of good. What about the medications that people are put on for PCOS? Do you advise people to take like
Depends on how bad their condition is. What I tell my girls, whoever is got PCOS, that if you do not get a period, at least 4 periods in a year, it means that your uterine health is suffering.
Okay.
Actually, in a healthy woman, you have 13 cycles in a year,
Yeah.
every 28 days. So that makes a sort of a
13,
lunar
yeah.
year where you have 13 cycles. But the bare minimum is 4 per year. So if she's not getting that, then she needs medications. If she has too much hair, even if she has, goes to you and gets that treatment,
Yeah.
but it will keep coming back.
Exactly.
So for that, we may use some hormonal pills to sort of prevent the regrowth. But please remember, there is no magic pill, no magic injection, which is now here.
Yeah, I know it's there everywhere and everybody's
but-
taking it. Yeah.
But even then, the lifestyle is the major contributor to this. Please change your
So
lifestyle.
So this insulin resistance, does it play an important role in
yes.
gynae health as well?
It does. It
Okay,
does.
metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, and the very fancy injection that is out and about these days. Do you advise that?
Where indicated, and it is very, very important that you have to be in the obese category before you go for
Anything like
injection.
that? Yeah.
Please do not use those injections for mild overweight. Everything has some harm. And what really upset me was the face.
Yeah.
They are now saying that if you're using those injections,
You get the Ozempic face,
you
right?
are, I'm not trying to take that name. So you get that face
Yeah.
that is written. So that frightened me. I was
Yeah.
thinking of having it, and I said, no,
it's very
I don't
frightening,
want
and,
that
and,
face.
And the sad part is they're putting you into this vicious circle. Where first you take the injection, you lose the weight, then you start using fillers. That's again artificial, and all of this is artificial. And eventually, we haven't even seen the side effects yet, and there are going to be, because anything that's short term is never going to,
Ultimately,
It
the
is
story
going to- it
is
is going to take a-
lifestyle.
yeah.
And I think what we need to advocate is education for the whole population, and especially the girls. You have 50% out of school girls and children, which is a disaster in making, and I don't see much progress being made in it. And we do see some initiatives by the government, by the NGOs, but we are far, far behind in girl education.
Exactly, and leading because of this, there's a lot of population outburst as well, and population is the current problem that we are facing most of all, and we tend to ignore it. So can we talk about contraception? Because a lot of girls out there do not know how to go about it, and I don't know why they don't know how to go about it, but they should be. So let us talk in detail about contraception and the methods available, the options available.
Again, we somehow, as a nation, have all the wrong statistics. We have the lowest contraceptive prevalence in the region.
Exactly. Yeah.
Somehow we put it on our religion, which I am sorry.
It is not
I
true,
am
though.
so privileged to be a Muslim. I am so lucky to be in Pakistan, in an Islamic country. It has nothing to do, it is entirely to do with socio-cultural norms.
Right.
And somehow it is very fashionable in our communities to be pregnant, and it is extremely unacceptable to be using contraception, because somehow it is very medical and it will make her fat, and it will, all sorts of
contrary of-
freckles will
yeah.
come on her face, and it is so harmful. And I am amazed by the degree of bad press we have for every contraceptive. And my basic solution is, you educate your girls. They will come for contraception. when your girls have no other purpose in their life other than nurturing children, producing children, and they are not a part of your socio-economic system, this cycle cannot be broken. Bangladesh is better than us, Iran is better than us, and they are
Everybody, yeah.
good Muslim countries.
Yes, true.
So it has nothing to do with Islam, it has to do
But
with
in fact, in
socio-cultural
Islam, it
norms.
says that for 2 years you're supposed to feed the baby.
So
if
nobody does that.
Yeah,
Nobody does that.
To be able to feed the baby for 2 years means you need to have a gap of at least
3
3
years.
years. And they don't respect that gap at all for I don't know why. So could you, shed light on the different options of contraceptions?
Such safe options are available for people who are looking for short-term contraception. The oral contraceptive pill is fantastic, and majority of women can take it easily if they are committed. If they're going to forget every other day, they should not go for such a option. If they have completed their family or they want a break for 3 to 5 years, or maybe they have 3 children and they're thinking maybe they will not have more, or maybe have one after 5 years, then they should go for long-acting reversible contraception. And there are very good options in the form of intrauterine contraceptive device, which is commonly known as the T, copper T.
Yes.
And there's also a hormonal device. Then you have implants which you can insert beneath the skin of your arm, and again that works for 3 to 5 years. So they are more sort of friendly to the woman. She doesn't have to remember every day, because we are all human beings,
Right.
and we do forget. And the other problem is that somehow in our socio-cultural system, getting an abortion is more acceptable than practicing contraception, which is such a sad statistic, because an illegal abortion can kill a woman.
Exactly.
While contraception I have yet to see a woman dying of contraception.
Yes.
I've seen women dying of pregnancy, I have seen women dying of criminal abortions, and I have seen none dying of contraception. So healthy timing and spacing is the mantra. The government slogan has changed from Khandani Mansuba Bandi to Khandani Mansuba Sazi.
Right.
So Mansuba Sazi is planning.
Yeah.
And who says you don't plan?
You plan for everything. For
You
almost
plan
every
when
day
you will
date.
make a house, which
Yeah.
house you will live, what furniture you will have, which school you will get
Yeah,
your
when
child
you can
into.
buy a car,
So
everything.
who has forbidden you from having a family planning which keeps your wife in optimum health and you get children in perfect health,
Yeah, they're
because they are coming at the right interval. So I would really want my girls, all the women who are listening to me, please practice effective contraception. We still have very traditional methods like withdrawal and barrier
but they
methods,
don't work as
which
much.
are not very
Reliable,
foolproof.
yeah.
Actually, in our culture, we complete our 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. And then we say, now we are ready to think about it. Then we commit 2 mistakes. Now we have 2 extra girls. Now,
To
if
balance
another
them up.
happens, she will go for an abortion.
Yeah.
And when she is about 42, she'll say, now I'm ready to have a tubal ligation. You know, I always say it is like when the horse has run out of the stable, now you want to lock the door.
Exactly. There's no point in it. Right?
So we need to think, and you should, as a couple, talk to each other. Again, there is hesitancy.
Yeah.
Women are shy of discussing this. Even men are shy of discussing this. And even in-laws and mothers, they should be talking to their children that as a couple, what can you afford? If you can afford more, have them. If you can't feed them, you can't clothe them, and you can't get them proper education.
What's the point then? Yeah.
And 40% of our children in Pakistan are mentally and physically stunted. And we are basically propagating that we are increasing the number of Muslims. So let's have good quality Muslims.
Why are we having dependent ones? Disabled, dependent.
Let's make
yeah.
a beautiful nation who are educated, who are an example for the world to follow, rather than
Just an
illiterate.
economic burden. Yeah.
Yeah,
That is very, very sad indeed. Why are we so scared of hormone replacement therapy? Why, when the, especially in contraception also, they say, oh, there are hormones involved, we won't take them. Then in menopause, a lot of women are facing a lot of symptoms, but they won't go for any sort of HRT. So why is there fear concerning HRT, and how early on should they start taking these hormone replacement, and how is it safe or not?
Again, as we were talking about puberty, when we are talking about menopause, first of all, everything is lifestyle. Please, again, we want a pill to pop. So if you are 45, you're 48, you're getting hot flashes, you are getting, a bit moody, not good sleep, change your lifestyle, start doing exercise, join a yoga session, do an online yoga session if you can't get out of the house. Do things to get an optimum weight, do your 8 to 10 glasses of water per day, have a balanced diet, and then if you're not better, go to a doctor. If you are suitable, you may be given a hormone. So hormone is no solution, but for contraception, hormone is an excellent solution. It's a safe solution. It does not cause cancer. Hardly have I ever seen any woman, we don't take much pills anyway in Pakistan. 2 to 3% of women are taking the contraceptive pill. It is extremely uncommon. Please don't be afraid. Whatever is necessary for better health, the couple has to decide, and the woman can always go for it.
Now let's talk about pregnancy. So what are the precautions you need to take for a good pregnancy? What are the care, like what kind of vaccinations, what kind of supplements, what exactly, how many screenings, how frequently?
Absolutely. Actually, pregnancy is supposed to be a state of health. It is not a disease.
Right.
So if you enter into a pregnancy in a healthy state, you will inshallah have a healthy outcome. So before you plan a pregnancy, in an ideal world, your blood pressure should be checked, your weight should be optimal, your hemoglobin should be good. If you have some thalassemia trait or some other condition, that should be well known to you, so that you can plan what screening tests you want. And if you have diabetes, it should be perfectly controlled at the time of conception. What we do is, oh, doesn't matter. Once I'll get pregnant, then I'll control my diabetes. Similarly, if you have blood pressure, it should be well controlled before you embark on a journey which is going to add to your family, and it should be a healthy addition. It should not be a danger to the mother. She may, yesterday I had a patient in my clinic, beautiful couple, and they had 2 children, and the lady was 40 years old, she had a BMI of 35, she had hypertension, previously she had gestational diabetes, and she wanted to discuss with me, should I proceed for a pregnancy? And I said, it is your desire, I respect that. But if you ask me, you have a boy and a girl, you have a beautiful family, you're winning. But if you proceed for a pregnancy at your weight, with your hypertension, history of gestational diabetes, you are likely to have a very high risk pregnancy. Risk of having a baby with Down syndrome is high. If the desire is not tremendous, far better not to have a pregnancy at this age with so many comorbids. But if this was, she did not have any children, then and she still, I would have respected her wishes. But again, I respect her wishes. I said, you want, we'll make you in a better condition, get you into premium condition. But if you ask my advice, I would say it's better not to get pregnant. And they were a good couple, and they sort of listened to me. They'll make their own decision. And I would respect whatever decision they take. But if they are in optimal condition, she reduces her weight by 5-10 kg, she has a better blood pressure, and still wants a baby, they are competent people to look after her.
So what are the reasons for this infertility? A lot of couples nowadays have infertility. Some have primary, some have secondary. And how do you fix that?
I think 50% of infertility in Pakistan is due to husbands working abroad. I think this is the biggest dilemma, and this is what we encounter. They are not infertile. It is the circumstances that they come every 2 years for 1 month, and they expect that girl to get pregnant. And she is under tremendous pressure that, Falan got married and she got pregnant the first night, and you haven't been able to, he's come 4 times in 10 years and you're still not pregnant.
Right.
So that is one. But routinely, couples living together, apparently healthy looking people, no problems, but in about a third of cases it would be something like PCOS, something like a tubal factor, some problem, or in another third it could be the husband, maybe his the quality of the sperms or some male problem, and in others it could be a mix of both. So that contributes, and nowadays lots of treatments are available, but again, as is the norm in Pakistan, abuse is very prevalent. We abuse ovulation induction drugs. We as health practitioners overuse injections, gonadotrophins, which should never be used in the community. And I get girls coming in with ovaries about 5 times the size they should be, because you know they were in a rush to have a baby because husband is going abroad, and the doctor who was responsible, often a general practitioner, has given them injection every day, and it's a life-threatening condition.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be rational as patients, and we have to be rational as health prescribers as well. So you should, I always say, maybe I'm that senior, I can afford to do this. I always say this is the way a disease should be managed. And people say, no, Doc Sahab, I want some shortcuts. I said, if you come to me, I will guide you and do the right steps. If you're not happy, you're free to go to some other person who will take shortcuts which may be harmful to you, or which may be beneficial in a social sense.
Right.
So I think we all as health practitioners have to be clear of our boundaries and make sure that we give. Nowadays IVF is available, IUI is available, ovulation induction tablets are available, injections are available. The correct use in the right couple is very
Important. You mentioned the HPV vaccine, and you also mentioned the prevalence of cervical cancer. How prevalent is cervical cancer in our part of the world? Because we don't take it seriously. Pap smear is not at all a part of our regular checkups anyways, and we don't go for vaccine. We think we are not a sexually active nation, so we don't need it. So
Yes, we have lots of misconceptions. We are all human beings, and we have all the vices that
Everyone has,
culture
yes.
has and society has. Obviously, we are lucky to have our Muslim religion, and even Christianity. All religions are
Yeah,
good.
all are
I
good.
respect every religion because they
Exactly.
all tell you to be good. No religion is
yes,
telling
no
you to be
religion
bad.
propagates immorality anyways.
Actually, the biggest part is that cervical cancer, which is cancer of the neck of the womb, that is due to human papilloma virus. This is the preventable cancer. So almost 90 to 98% of cervical cancers are due to this virus. So when the woman gets married or enters into a relationship, that is the time when she is at risk of contracting HPV.
Right.
So if she has HPV vaccine before she gets married, she would be protected for life. No, that vaccine has been available for the past 2 decades, unfortunately not in Pakistan. And the screening test has been available for the past 5 decades in the West. We have it here, but it is not universally used. So then that's not a screening tool. You have to give it to the whole population. So almost 90 to 98% of cervical cancers are related to HPV, and in Pakistan we have annually about 5,000 cancers of cervix every year, and it is such good news that government of Pakistan has been able to procure, with the assistance of Gavi, vaccines for girls between 9 to 14 years for the next 3 years, and it would be free of cost in the EPI. So the girls who are in school will be offered in school, and those who are out of school would be getting that from the mobile teams or from their fixed vaccination centers. So I would encourage all parents who have girls between 9 to 14 years should go ahead. There's just one vaccine, and it will protect them for the next 2-3 decades from cervical cancer, and they should take it up rather than take the wrong message.
Right.
And similarly, once this program is rolled out, we are expecting that that vaccine will also be imported for women and girls who are older. And maybe when the girl is getting married at 22 years of age, she can have, but then you have to give at least 2 doses.
Exactly.
1 dose is only recommended for the young girls between 9 to 14 years. So I think screening, again, whenever a woman comes for a gynae checkup, we do an opportunistic screening. So we do an opportunistic screening, but please, 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 the vaccine is very good, and please, as a jahez, as a dowry, give folic acid and HPV vaccine to your young daughter, it will give her help.
Exactly. What are the symptoms of ovarian and endometrial cancer? How do we early detect them? Are there ways to actually prevent it and to get treated right in time instead of, losing your life to it?
I think we're very lucky as far as the cervical cancer, it's the only preventable cancer. So I think that is the preventable one. But endometrial cancer usually presents with irregular bleeding. So if you have irregular, and same is true for cervical cancer.
And
If you're
ovarian as well?
Ovarian is a bad cancer. It is inside the abdomen and doesn't cause symptoms. So ovarian cancer is very no symptoms, maybe a bit of indigestion, and the woman goes to her GP, then she goes off to her gastroenterologist, and if you do an early ultrasound, you would pick up such women and you could offer something, but there is no screening we can offer women with ovarian cancer. But endometrial cancer is usually a good cancer in the sense it's curable. Same is true for cervical cancer, and they both present with irregular bleeding. So report early, don't sit at home and be shy. And the same is true for breast cancer. The breast is an organ, it's a skin. It's a skin appendage.
Right.
It's a gland, and we can feel the lump, and we still don't get checked.
Yes.
So these are things that awareness has to be increased. I'm sure we'll be able to overcome them.
Okay, a lot of women have miscarriages or missed abortions, and after that they do not go for the required DNC and everything or cleaning inside. And even if they do, then they just go to these local they're not even midwives or not even qualified people who kind of ruin them more. So could you stress on the importance of going to a proper qualified gynecologist or obstetrician to get yourself completely cleaned after the procedure?
Nowadays, we have a lot of change. Previously, it was considered that you must have a clean up after every miscarriage to ensure your future health. Nowadays, we do a lot of medical miscarriages.
Okay.
In missed abortion, if it is within 10 weeks, 12 weeks, we can use some medications which can be either inserted in the vagina or can be taken under the sublingually. We can take those medications, and they naturally empty the uterus. But it is very important that a week later you see your health practitioner to confirm that everything has cleaned up. So nowadays 90% of girls are not going through a curettage, because that is, again, it is not recommended, and we recommend suction evacuation.
Okay.
Previously, there we used to have an instrument known as a curette, and
Yes.
that is absolutely forbidden by WHO, that if you have to do a cleanup, use suction, because it is
Okay.
safer. It doesn't
won't erode the-
go through the uterus. It is not likely to damage. So the things change, and I always recommend to our doctors, please be updated. Every 6 months, things update. And we say, I have done it for 30 years, I am
I'll
very
keep doing it.
successful, don't teach me. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, those times have changed. It's just a mobile,
Yeah.
press it and you have that knowledge there. So
Exactly.
your patients are Googling, and they will come to you and say,
You're
Dr. why?
obsolete now. Yeah.
So please keep up to date, do safe practices, medical miscarriage in the right dose. Unfortunately, our health practitioners are giving in totally wrong doses. They are never recommended as with a sip of water. They are either recommended under the tongue or per vaginally, because otherwise they are not absorbed. So women come to me, I am taking 2 tablets 3 times a day by water and nothing has happened. So I said, well, you've taken the wrong route
Yeah.
and the wrong dose.
Yeah.
And the dose is it is available on net, it is available in the textbook, but we continue doing things, I don't know why.
Yeah, we do that. What about fibroids? A lot of people say there's no allopathic treatment for fibroids. Let's go for other alternative routes and all of that. So can you please bust that myth as well?
Absolutely, you do not have any such issue, and you can always manage things that way. But homeopathic doesn't work. Nothing works. These are actually tumors. These are actually tumors, and they are not going to go away whatever medication you take.
Yeah.
So you just, if your symptoms are not too much, just live with them. And whenever somebody comes to me with fibroids and doesn't have much symptoms, I say out of 10 women, 3 will have fibroids. So why are you worried? Similarly, out of 10 women, 2 will have PCOS. Why are you worried? If the symptom isn't too bad, get on with your life. And when the symptom becomes too bad, we'll treat the symptom. If heavy periods, we'll give medication. If it is pressure, then we'll do a myomectomy. It depends on what the symptom. If it is infertility, we'll treat the infertility. Just the fibroid itself is not a problem. Just PCOS is not a problem. It is the symptom associated with which has to be controlled.
Which has to be controlled. All right. Let us talk a little bit about postpartum depression as well. I really want to touch that topic because in our part of the world, you know, everybody says, oh, nothing, everybody has children, you're not the only one, why should you be suffering from anything? How common is it? How prevalent is it? How do we deal with somebody who's given birth to a child, and what are the different, you know, precautions that we need to take after that?
It is actually a continuum. Almost 80% of girls have blues. So in the first week or 10 days after they deliver, they are a little sensitive. They immediately become VP. They get very upset that somebody came and said my child is not pretty or something like that, and who is she to say whether I should breastfeed or bottle feed, and start crying unreasonably. That just passes naturally after 7 to 10 days. Then in the second week, if it is a postpartum depression that sets in, you can't sleep better, you generally are depressed, you do not communicate well with people, you have problems with the baby, you don't know, you're a bit depressed, and that continues beyond 10 days. Then you're thinking of postpartum depression, which is about 1%, 2% girls have it. Then the most worrying is postpartum psychosis. That is very uncommon, maybe 1 in 1,000, 1 in 500 girl, and that's where suicidal thoughts come in. That's where you start risk of harming yourself, harming your baby, and those girls who are intelligent, they convey it. And in the village, they'll say it is the saya and take it to be beaten up by the local
by the
peer.
exorcist.
So there is no saya. It's a physical, mental condition which is treatable, but it is likely that we have to be aware of it and seek help. And whenever somebody comes with me with postpartum depression, I say, don't worry, all Hollywood actresses have it. So you are very stylish. Don't worry, there is nothing bad about it. It is very normal to have these feelings, and there is a treatment for it. And along with our psychiatrist colleagues, we manage it.
So as a gynecologist, one message to all our viewers out there: what should they be eating, what should they be doing, and how they need to be you know, in charge of their good gynecological and obstetric health?
My message is empower your women. Be the father who empowers the daughter, be the husband who empowers the wife, be the father who empowers the girl. We are a patriarchal society. We do not get empowered unless our male give us that power. So it is a community initiative. If we are empowered, we'll have good health seeking behavior, we'll reach the doctor in time, and we will have no serious incident. Be happy to use contraception. Plan your family, plan your life, plan your delivery. Decide which center will you go, which doctor or which health worker will look after you. You want a home delivery? Get a health worker who will come for a safe home delivery. So please empower the women, educate your girls. We are going to be the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Sayyeda Batul, for joining us today. We had gynecologist and obstetrician, Professor Dr. Sayyeda Batul Mazhar with us, and she gave an in-depth explanation on how you need to empower your children, recognize your worth as a woman, take care of your health so that you can, you know, actually give forth a life to a beautiful family. Thank you so much for watching. Inshallah, we'll meet you next week. Allah Hafiz.